Good morning. It's Eddie G once again with another show, Eddie G's Music World, for October the 2nd, 2018. I had to find my way through a maze of different buttons again with the YouTube show that I do. They change things around and I have to figure it out. It's probably not rocket science, but still, when things change, you have to figure out how to do them. I wish they wouldn't change, but they do. So anyway, it's Eddie G's Music World for another show. And today, I'm going to basically stick to the top 100 greatest guitarists according to Rolling Stone. I'll be getting to that pretty soon. I've been listening to a little of other things on different music that I kind of like. If ever you really want to hear some really upbeat pop, I haven't done a retrospective on them, planned anything, but you should definitely check out the Hollies. I did tune in to a few songs of theirs lately, and they talk about how they were in the Abbey Road studios, and down the hall were the Beatles recording, and they would go pop in on each other's shows. Like there were times where Paul would be there, and he'd come into the Holly sessions. And look on YouTube, you'll find a video about how they recorded one of their songs, Carrie Ann, the Hollies, where they didn't even have headphones for a lot of it. They basically, one guy played guitar live, and the other two were harmonizing, or all three were, and they were basically just playing it without any overdubs, without a lot of equipment set up around them. Like the drums was just a microphone hovering over the drummer, and it was pretty basic, but they must have been really great producers to put it all together and make it sound great. But they have really they're an underrated band. They did a lot of Beatlesque type of songs in the Beatle Invasion. They kind of hung around till the 70s, and maybe they had The Air That I Breathe, written by Albert Hammond, and other ones. So they made it for a good 12, 13 years. Had a lot of great songs. Not sure if they're still around, but probably they're pretty in their early to mid 70s, or some of them passed away. I know Graham Nash was in that band, and he left to go form Crosby, Stills, Nash, and then Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. So it's just a little commentary on the greatness of that band, the Hollies. I was on the Grigster show last night. You can find him on Twitter, and then he has a show, Number One Bad Dude. You should listen to him. And I talked about the Hollies. But even though he asked me to talk about new bands, I didn't hear my phone or his phone or whatever, and I mentioned the Hollies. So we'll take it from the wherever I left off, if I can find it. I know pretty much my last guitarist that I mentioned. Let's just see. I don't think I'd be repeating anything. I think I last did Bruce Springsteen talking about because he's listed at number 96. And of course, all the soloing that he did, and he's up there high on this list by Rolling Stone. I know that Steve Van Zandt did a lot of guitar work for the Bruce Springsteen band too, but obviously they consider Bruce to be worthy of number 96 on the top 100 guitarists of all time. Okay, did I do this? I don't know. Roger McGuinn, number 95. I was listening to a few Birds tracks the other day, and I could see Crosby in there with his bass and play. He had a very odd stage presence, dressing with a cape. It looked like it was a bat that he was trying to imitate. But Roger McGuinn was playing great guitar on those songs. It was a 12-string Rickenbacker, and I know he came to Montreal about 15 years ago, and maybe I should have gone, but I didn't go. It would have been interesting to have a chance to meet somebody that was in a band that had a lot of great songs like 8 Miles High and other ones. I know he probably has stories about how Dylan gave the Bird songs, but for sure, McGuinn had a very very upbeat style of guitar and nice chord choices as well. I'm not a guitarist, so I can't really elaborate on the exact way that he did play the guitar, but If you hear the bird songs, you'll be impressed. 94 is a guy in a very big band that disappeared in the last, I think, around 15 years ago. Peter Buck. He was the guitarist for REM, who I did see live in Montreal about in the mid 80s. And Peter Buck had a lot to do with that sound. I'm sure he contributed to the writing of a lot of those songs, like Radio Free Europe and The One I Love and other ones. Kind of, they bridged the gap between punk and hard rock and pop. And a lot of bands featured that type of sound later on. Oregon, of course, with the Pumpkins, that type of songs. You know, that it was the time that REM was around, that Peter Buck was very, very well respected in the music business for his guitar work. And I think I've heard that these guys are pretty much retired or not around as much and not playing that much anymore. They're not together, but maybe, they could reunite, but I feel maybe the time has passed for REM. Don't expect to hear a reunion anytime soon. There might have been a death in that band, but I don't think it's Peter Buck. I'm pretty sure he's still alive. Here's a guy that was a great songwriter, Paul Simon, and an acoustic guitar, electric guitar. He was the one that played that in Simon & Garfunkel, and of course the Paul Simon solo records. So he's at number 93 on this chart. He definitely had a very soft touch with his folk style, finger picking, and obviously, not a hard rock kind of guy, but he did whatever he did amazingly. Within the band Simon & Garfunkel, of course, it's known that they did Sound of Silence and kind of drifted off. They weren't really that great friends, it's pretty commonly known. And then they get a call, Paul Simon did and Garfunkel did separately, that, hey, your song Sound of Silence is catching on. You better find your way back to the States and do some tours and record more music because it's catching on here. And I think it went to number 1. But Paul Simon was just in Montreal. I had a chance to see him, but I did not go. I mean, I'm trying to kind of scale back a lot of the concerts I go to. I live pretty far from where these guys play in Bell Centre in Montreal, and I don't really want to go more than 2-3 times a year now. So he's done touring anyway, Paul Simon. So the chance of seeing him again is gone, but it's okay. I mean, I like the guy's guitar and his singing and songwriting, but I don't think it's a big deal to not see him live. Number 92, a guy I've heard of course, Dimebag Darrell. Number 92, in, of course, Pantera. He died I forget exactly when. He was on stage, and some crazed guy came on stage and shot him, killed him. And Pantera has never been a band that I really paid a lot of attention to, but they're obviously metal, very big in the metal world. I know his other brother just died, Vince, whatever Vince's last name, I forget the name. Vinnie Paul, that's it. So both brothers are dead. It's pretty sad. And, well, if you do listen to Pantera, you'll notice that in the metal world, this Dimebag Darrell was well respected. The Pantera became a big band, but never like a Metallica level, but still like maybe a Megadeth level. I did not ever see Pantera live. I don't know if I ever, could have seen them. I don't know the history of Pantera coming around and touring. But I've heard a lot of stories about this Dimebag Darrell, so I guess he's worth being at number 92 on this Billboard Top 100 Guitarists of all time. Okay, let's see what the next one is on the list. 91, Dave Davies. Okay, I do know more about this kind of guy. Of course, one of the 2 guitarists in the Kinks. I met his brother Ray and asked how Dave was doing. And this is 2007. And Ray said he's doing a lot better. And of course, there is a story that the Kinks are reforming and going out on tour. I mean, I saw Ray Davies. He played about a decent amount of Kinks songs, so I didn't really see the Kinks, but I kind of saw like a third of the Kinks. So I don't know if it's worth bothering with to see them again with the Dave Davies in there, and maybe there's some another member too. But You Really Got Me was a groundbreaking song, and Dave was the lead guitarist on there, 17 years old. And this was kind of leading into the metal pop type of field, you know. They had a lot of those types of songs, and they kind of, you know, it was interesting that Van Halen picked that song to do a cover, a little heavier version of it, of course, but still both great. He did some alterations to an amp, I heard, Dave Davies, for certain sound. And then there's stories that Jimmy Page did the guitar on You Really Got Me. So although Dave Davies was great and known for his guitar, maybe that particular session he wasn't involved in, and Page was, because of course Page was known to be a very well-used session musician in England at the time. Sometimes these record companies don't, you know, they want to have a seasoned guy in there and they threw him in, but I don't really know. It's never been proven either way as far as I know. But I think Dave Davies has disputed that it was Jimmy Page. So both of these guys know if they played on it or not. But let's see if from reading on a little further and remembering what I've read, yes, it is Dave Davies who played on the You Really Got Me, and the rumor was Page, which was not true. Let's go down the list and see what's next. Tom Verlaine from Television, number 90 on the chart of the top 100 greatest songs on Eddie G's Music World for October 2nd, 2018. He was in the band Television. They had a great song called Marquee Moon. That's probably the only one I really know. They were kind of had a following, cult following type of, in the era of the Ramones, and never broke into the mainstream, but maybe they didn't care. Maybe they were happy just to do great music, and not the fact that they didn't break into the mainstream doesn't, maybe it wasn't a big deal to him. But if you hear the guitar on that song, Marquee Moon, it sounds very much original, which makes it stand out quite a bit. So I can't attest to his style over many years of music that he might have done. I can only attest to that song that I do know, which is Marquee Moon. I once won a contest because a radio station played 2 seconds of Marquee Moon, and they said, "Who knows this band? Who's the band?" So I knew, called in to the radio show, and I won tickets to see the lead singer of Tragically Hip do a show, which was kind of boring, and the guy died. It's just a little anecdote from the past about Tom Verlaine. And let's see who's next on the list of the top 100 guitarists. Bonnie Raitt. Okay, I know she's kind of bridged the gap of a little bit of country, a little bit of blues. She had a massive album that came out in 89, 90. She won a Grammy, and it was a big deal for her. Something to talk about was the big song off of it. And I see she does play electric, she does play acoustic, but kind of maybe I don't have as a massive amount of knowledge of her whole style, but she could go. She did a slide type of guitar as well. I know that, and she's credited with doing a lot of amazing guitar work over the years. And I've never seen her live, but I do know of her very well. And I'm gonna say that. I don't even know if she's still. I think she's still recording. I've heard something out there with her. Every few years she comes out with an album. She's been around since the early 70s, so that's quite a while. It's quite amazing that she's still a very long-term type of artist that didn't fade away and still has a great reputation as a great guitarist in the music business. Number 88. Let's see if I can guess. Who could this guy pick as somebody that's a great guitarist but not high, like, Robbie Krieger? Let's guess. I'm sure it won't be Robbie Krieger. Carl Perkins, see? He's one of these early years guys that influenced the Beatles. George Harrison took a lot of his style. I know that he did Blue Suede Shoes, which Elvis covered famously. And I've listened to some of his music over the years. He was part of the Sun Sessions. He did Glad All Over before, I guess, Dave Clark 5. And Eric Clapton says he was an influence. John Fogerty says he was an influence. It was like a country style, but kind of drifted into the rock type of songs. Tom Petty had said something like that. And I know that I don't know if he ever, resented the fact that he went pretty far, but Elvis was kind of similar, kind of the Southern boy, played guitar, sang pretty well kind of guy, but Carl Perkins was probably considered a major success, but Elvis came out around the same time, and of course Elvis was the one that people think of the most, but he'll always have Blue Suede Shoes as a song that stands out in his career that people will remember forever. And Elvis did a great job with it, but Carl Perkins was the original. And to say that all these big rock stars called him an influence is a pretty impressive thing to say. So that means they liked him, and he for sure is worthy of being high up on this list. I was going to guess, but then I just saw the number 87 guitarist, a guy I have seen once live, James Hetfield from Metallica. So the 80s scene was where they became big, and he was an original member, if I'm correct. I know when I did see him live, it was weird the way these guys would play off each other. He would play lead, and then he'd play rhythm, and the other guitarist of Metallica would switch off. But the other guitarist did more lead, as far as I'm concerned, than Hetfield did. Now, of course, I can't remember his name. Isn't that amazing? I know his name so well. And when I have to do a talk about Metallica, he slips my mind. But I know maybe while I'm talking about James Hetfield, the other guy's name come to mind. But for sure, James balances the great guitar work that he's done. I know he writes a lot of the Metallica songs, or co-writes them with the other members. They pass around papers and they add words, and musically they play off each other amazingly, two guitarists. I know the Megadeth guy, Dave Mustaine, was in the band at the beginning, and that didn't work out. Too much drinking and carrying on, and they booted him out of the band and gave him enough money to get on a bus. Not very nice. But they're one of the top bands of all time. Not a top 40 type of group, of course. Very heavy metal, and a bit of a softness thrown in, and musically with the guitars that he played. A lot of times, if you're not in the studio, you can't really tell who plays what. But when you see them live, you can tell a little more, because you can see how they play, who plays what type of parts of Metallica. I know that for the Rolling Stones, that's the kind of thing I noticed, where Ron Wood and Keith Richards, they're kind of intertwining their guitar style, and it's not always easy to see who's playing what part. So I've seen Metallica once live. Here's a guy. Wow, this is a really obscure one for me. Jay Mascis, number 86. He was in a band, Dinosaur Jr. You do know that band. But this is one of these things where my lack of preparation has cost me, but I don't think it'll really be a big deal that I don't know much about this guy. Maybe it'll cause me to to look up Dinosaur Jr. and hear once again what it is that they did, because I know they had one or two songs, notably that he did. There's tracks like "Feel the Pain" and "Little Furry Things." We'll have to move on to number 85, and we have a major guitarist who did some work with the Animals in the like after their heyday, and of course joined the Police and became a big star with them. Andy Summers. So he's at number 85. I have seen the Police live twice, and was kind of impressed with his playing. He definitely contributed quite a bit. I know that Sting gets all the a lot of the credit for writing a lot of these songs and singing them and his bass and all that, but for sure Andy Summers had a very melodic style. It's not known as a heavy guitar band, but for sure his importance was noticed by many people. He had a great tone and style. It fit perfectly with Sting's songs, with his lyrics too. There was not a lot of it wasn't one of these flashy kind of guys. He just knew how to fill in the parts, and he was great in acoustic jazz-oriented style too. You hear his great guitar work on "Message in a Bottle" and "Every Breath You Take." Those are standout songs that the Police are very well known for. That Andy Summers, of course, did quite a bit with. And I'm not sure what Animal songs he did. I know he wasn't part of the '60s Animals. There were times in the mid '70s that the Animals, I think, were touring, and maybe he was on those tours, or maybe he did some session work, but not original. But he had some contributions to the Animals. But of course, the Police was the main thing that he's known for. I don't know. I don't know what he's up to lately. I know he was definitely part of the reunion, of course, that happened around 2009. That came to town and did two shows. They sold out, I'm sure, and I did see them twice in the early 80s. So I didn't go see the reunion. I didn't feel the need to see them a third time. Number 84. Let's see if I can guess who's a great guitarist that we have not heard from yet. I know it won't be a Page or a Townsend, knowing these list guys. They're going to make them high up. And there won't be a Gilmore because he's going to be high up. So let me think of a guy that was in a band that gets credit but not considered like the greatest guitar. Doubt if they'd throw Lennon in there. Let me say Keith Richards and guess. 84. Joe Perry. Okay, why not? I mean, his work on his solo work, his work with Aerosmith, almost a 50-year run with Aerosmith, even though that he did leave the band and come back. I have seen Aerosmith twice live and very impressed with his solos and all his work that he's done. He's definitely stands out as a major contributor to Aerosmith. I know there's other guys. There's another guitarist in Aerosmith as well. He definitely contributes as much as Tyler to the sound of Aerosmith. It's sort of a Keith Richards type of sound, where he's not the main instrument like constantly playing, but he's important to the band. Very, very laid back, very spontaneous sound. Live, he pulls it off amazingly. He definitely had a project, Joe Perry project. They had one or two songs from the East Coast to the West Coast. And somehow, like I said before in talks of Aerosmith in the past, that he still has stuck around Aerosmith all these years and dealt with all the stress and fights and conflicts with Steve Perry over the years. And they're doing currently planning a residency at Las Vegas. I was thinking they would come to Canada and do a tour, and I would check out Aerosmith for the one last time, because they are getting around 70 and 48 years so far. I'm sure they're going to hit 50 years, and at some point they're going to have to slow down or stop the band, like all these bands are doing, a lot of bands are doing. Number 83. Who could it be now? No, it won't be men at work. Let's just see what it is. Eddie Hazel. Wow, this is a guy. Let's see if I can really figure out much about this guy. Great soloist. He was. He had connection to Funkadelic. He was in the band Funkadelic, but I don't know much about Funkadelic's music. But he passed away about 1992. Maybe I'll have to listen to a little bit more music. But he did influence people like Jay Mascis that was discussed earlier. Mike McCready. I think Mike McCready is in Pearl Jam, and Lenny Kravitz. So, if you want to hear more about his style, I would say go to listen to Funkadelic. They have a song called Maggot Brain. I have heard it, but for the moment, it doesn't stand out in my mind as something that I can remember. So that's my instruction to you to see why this guy got so high. Go and listen to Funkadelic style, and he's a guitarist. Probably more than one in there, but he's definitely one of the main guys, maybe the only one. And listen to Maggot Brain. Number 82 on the top 100 guitarists of all time for Rolling Stone on Eddie G's Music Book. Nels Cline. Let's see what I can tell you about this guy. Oh, I saw the band that he's in, so I did see this band, Wilco. So he's a guitarist for them. I like the guitars when they would be played live, so kind of a country-ish type of thing. They opened up for Neil Young. This is 2007, I'm going to say, or 2008, maybe end of 2008. And kind of a Birds, not a kind of CSN, Crosby, Stills, Nash type of harmony band, maybe a bit like the band in that folk rock field. And I don't know, Wilco became a big band. I never really got heavily into them. I was impressed with their play, with his play, Nels Cline. So for that, I have to say, go back and listen to a little bit of Wilco, and maybe you'll be impressed with Nels Cline. Here's a guy, Lou Reed, number 81. Of course, Velvet Underground. Never did see him live. Never saw the Underground live. Did pass away about 4 or 5 years ago. Kind of punk rock, but a lot of experimental, jazzy type of stuff that came out of the early years of Velvet Underground, and Lou Reed is more famous for not being famous, meaning he was known to be a guy that never, unless you count Walking the Wild Side, which was a very out there song, sexual song and stuff. Somebody once lent me an album of Lou Reed's called Metal Machine Music, which was, I didn't know what to think of it. It was on purpose some kind of I heard it was just some fight with the record company that was after them to produce more songs, and he kind of did it as a contractual obligation. But definitely listen to that if you want to hear a lot of feedback and improvised noisy guitar work. Then you will get to hear that, because for whatever it was meant to be, Metal Machine Music was a fascinating piece. So go find that. I gave back the album to my friend that lent it to me, so I did hear the whole thing, and I was kind of shocked by it. At the same time, it's worth listening to. Number 80. I hope I know the next artist, because when I don't know the artist, it makes it hard for me to describe, a lot of things about my memories or knowledge. But I'm going to give it a shot. Number 80, let's see. Buddy Holly, well, at least I know about him. Poor Buddy died 1 year before I was born, February 2nd. No, I was born February 3rd. Yeah, February 3rd, 1959 was when he died, and I was born February 3rd, 1960. I wonder if the Hollies, who I talked about earlier, took Buddy Holly's name and made it, inspired them to use the name the Hollies. That's quite possible. Well, in a short period of time, Buddy Holly did crank out about a good 6, 7, 8 hits. Influenced a lot of people like Clapton, Beck, and Harrison. He had a he played a lot of electric, obviously acoustic too, but on the records you could hear quite a bit, like on Peggy Sue, It's So Easy, and he mixed the vocals in. I'm always impressed with someone who can sing and play guitar at the same time live, which he could do. And the studio didn't have to do them at the same time. He could have done them separately, of course. He had a Stratocaster, double guitar, bass, and drum quartet. The band was, and that was the main. That was one of the early rock bands out there, because this was when he started was probably 55, and it's 56 maybe, and maybe the Crickets, I've heard, influenced the Beatles because they're both like insects, and definitely a major influence on McCartney, so much so that Paul McCartney later on in his financial extra money days, where he could afford to invest in expensive things, he bought out the Buddy Holly songs so that he owned the publishing of the Buddy Holly records. So that made money whenever Buddy Holly songs were used in commercials or movies or TV shows or whatever. They had to pay McCartney because he owned the rights to the Buddy Holly music. But I'm not sure if he sold those rights, but he definitely had them. And well, Buddy Holly probably would have been a massive rock star had he lived a little bit longer. But he definitely got on the plane and, with the Big Bopper, Richie Valens, and the plane crashed along with the pilot died too. And the gig he was supposed to do was in, I think, Clear Lake, Iowa. And of course, he couldn't. Nobody made the shows. So I think Bobby V is the one that took his place that day, because since they all died, and then Bobby D just passed away 3, 4 years ago. And I did see Bobby V live at an oldies revival show about 15 years ago. I would have liked to have talked to him, but I did not. I waited outside the building with Bobby V in it, with the Shirelles and the Contours and other bands, and like Lou Christie. But Bobby V, he didn't come out, or maybe he waited until everybody left, and I never got to talk to him. But that would have been a question I would have asked him. On through this list we go. Number 79 on the top. Mike Campbell. Here's a guy who just changed jobs. Number 79. I have seen Tom Petty twice. 1980 and 2014. It's quite a gap. And Campbell is the lead guitarist. Oh, I for sure put him high on there. He's very impressive. 1980, when I saw Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, I wasn't paying that close attention, and my seats were a bit far. But I had very good seats on in 2014 when I did see Tom Petty for the last time. And I could see that a lot of the lead guitar parts were Mike Campbell, with that big, beautiful red guitar of his. And a lot of the rhythm was Tom Petty, which is not to say that rhythm guitar is not a very difficult or important instrument. It was amazingly important. But the flashier stuff on the Petty records was played by Mike Campbell. So I was mesmerized by his play. He's an original Heartbreaker, of course. He's been around for all that time, all the soloing and stuff like on You Got Lucky. A lot of it's him, and he's definitely up there with the best. And now he's replaced Lindsey Buckingham in Fleetwood Mac, because like Fleetwood Mac's typical style is people stay for a long time. There's often some dispute. They either quit or they get fired. And I guess Fleetwood Mac, even though they're 52 years in the business, still touring. And I think they brought Christine McVie back for a bit. And Mike Campbell is now in there. And out is Lindsey Buckingham. Like a lot of these guys, Lindsey Buckingham co-wrote a lot of Fleetwood Mac songs, so there'll be some compensation coming his way when Fleetwood Mac tours, because you have to pay the guy that wrote the songs, and he wrote quite a bit of the big hits from the '70s era, mid to late '70s on Rumors and other ones as well. So for sure, Mike Campbell is an iconic guitarist. I could say that I was impressed with his style, and we will see who's next on the list of great guitarists. John Fahey. Wow, that name sounds very familiar. I think he was a folky type of guy. Maybe one of these guys that never broke into the mainstream as a big star. Kind of improvised a lot. Electric guitar, acoustic, kind of punkish vein too. And a lot of people, talked about how great he was. And I'll admit, it's another one of these guys that push comes to shove, I don't have a lot of knowledge about, but maybe it's a guy that I'm going to have to try to figure out, since he's up there this high, number 78. The guy who makes the list thinks he was great, so maybe he's worth more listening from me. He died in 2001 at 61. I'm 58. Better last past 61 or I'm in big trouble. Okay, number 77. Let's hope it's a guy I know a little more about and I can talk a bit about. Willie Nelson, of course, just quite a bit of knowledge about that guy. He did write some great songs like Crazy, I think he wrote for Patsy Cline. Mostly known for his acoustic. The guy's been around forever, since the 60s. He's in his early to mid 80s. Not sure how long he's going to be able to perform, but he still does. It's unbelievable that this guy is still performing. He's in his 80s. He's 82 years old. Around. I mean, doesn't make sense. He's had health problems. He's definitely had a marijuana fixation for many years. He didn't pay his taxes. He owed millions. He had to go on tour to pay that off. I like his acoustic work. You can hear the tenderness in his playing on a lot of his songs. A guy I should be listening to a little more, since he is a legend and won't be around for a lot longer, at least recording. Maybe he'll live to 95, I don't know. But can't keep up another 5 years of touring, that's for sure. But there's no way I'm going to go see him live. But as an acoustic player, he's definitely one of the best tender style, soft music, country flavored music that he does. Sure, he does play electric, but I just don't recognize songs that have his electric guitar in them. It's funny how he was around in the 60s, clean cut, didn't look much like he does now with the kind of beard and the scruffy hair and country style. But in the early, like in the mid 60s when he came out, he definitely had a clean cut look. Shorter hair, black and white pictures you could find of him. But he was growing in his popularity back then. And it worked out. Robbie Krieger. Here, I was thinking Robbie Krieger would show up. I was really thinking, I almost predicted him around 82, 83 in the list, and here he is. I didn't think that this guy would really make much of a big deal about the Doors guitarist, but here he is, so I'm happy about that. Could have seen the Doors in 1965, but I was only 5, so I never did. Could have seen Robbie Krieger in the new Doors that came around in the 2001, where they had Ian Astbury from the Cult. I love this guy's playing. It's an upfront. On the records, you hear his guitar very, very prominent. He wrote "Light My Fire." The Doors are heavy on the guitar and the organ especially, and I like the soloing as well. There was no rhythm player in the band, so he had to play a style to fill out the entire songs that were on the Doors music. So he had to do a lot of work to make those songs sound full, because I'm sure live he was the only one, and on the record he's the only guy. Um, but funny, who's the bass player in the Doors? Now, come to think of it, we know the drummer, Densmore, Manzarek, Krieger played the guitar. Was there even a bass on the Doors records? And if so, I'm wondering if Krieger played it or if someone else did, or maybe there was none. We know Morrison, he didn't play the bass. But they, oh, here, I remember now, they didn't have a bass player. So it just made him kind of do a lot more work. It's rare that you can have a band without a bass player and be that popular and do come up with some great songs like that. Okay, so Krieger I thought of, and there he was. He showed up. Let's see. Now that I've picked out Krieger from the list before looking at it, can I come up with another guy? Okay, let's guess. The guy from ZZ Top. Could it be Hill? A guy named Hill? I'm sure he's going to show up here. Let's see if he's next. Joni Mitchell. Oh, I didn't think of her, but yeah, she is a great folk singer, guitarist. And I used to listen to a lot of albums like Blue and other ones. My sister had the records in the record collection, and nice laid-back vocal style, and the guitars were very, very folky. Well, I'm going on no limb saying that folky, of course. She did write this Flight Tonight, and she had a bit of a jazzy feel to it later on, and very good friends with David Crosby, who was on Twitter, and I think I've had 3 little back and forths with Crosby over the years. I even gave my best wishes to give to Joni Mitchell when she was sick. She's apparently better. I heard stories that Joni Mitchell, because she hasn't really toured much, and although wrote about 3 or 4 songs for other people that were hits, and had her own hits and her own sales, maybe the big mansions and the spending caught up with her. I heard she was financially. The story was that she had a massive pool that she couldn't clean or fill up because she was low on money. But I guess maybe her record deals weren't great back then, and being that she's probably in her mid-70s, I doubt if she's touring. But she contributed quite a bit. I liked Free Man in Paris, which was about David Geffen, because they worked together in the 60s, and that influenced that song. I know that she really had a pop crossover in the early 70s, 70, 71, 72, 75, whatever, around there. And then she became more of a style that was popular, but not with top 40 hits. But a lot of these acts, they get revered not just for having hits, but for their amazing talent, which she was. Still is. Number 74. David Gilmour, let's guess. No, Dick Dale. I know his stuff a little bit. Old 60s stuff. Some instrumentals. Can't remember the exact songs that he was known for, but he had a reverb style and influenced people like Lifeson from Rush. Said he liked the way he arranged his songs. And yeah, it was like a surf rock style of music that Dick Dale was known for. He was probably played on some sessions and had his own. He was not a massive star in the sense of other bands like surf bands like the Beach Boys, but I do know his name. I have heard it around, and that's a pretty high ranking for Dick Dale. So maybe I'll listen to him a little later. Number 73. Could there be like a Neil Young somewhere in there? No, Kurt Cobain, of course. The guitarist from Nirvana. Wrote most of the songs. Complained a lot that the other two, Novoselic and left the food, David Grohl, got any cuts of money at all because they didn't contribute a lot to the writing. But he definitely, I liked his acoustic work on, that show that he did, which was One of these unplugged shows where he has that sweater on. You could see him playing a lot of the songs, "The Man Who Saved the World" and other ones. I liked his style of guitar. He he liked he was influenced by Cheap Trick for sure. That same type of a guitar style to a point. The Melvins, Kiss, but it's kind of unconventional. Lithium was one of his best songs that he played on, and of course, the famous end to his life. And now his daughter has one of his early guitars, and her ex-husband is trying to get in a court battle. And I don't know how that turned out. If the ex-husband got it, the ex-husband of Kurt Cobain's daughter got it or not. But he did have his own style, a very unique style, and not known for, you don't think of him as being one of these great guitarists, but this list maker did consider him worthy of being at number 73 on the Rolling Stone Top 100 Guitarists of All Time. We're going to another guy. Here's a guy from the mostly the 80s, late 80s, early 90s, and today. John Frusciante from the Red Hot Chili Peppers at number 72. And unique style for sure. Never did see the Chili Peppers live, but I like their funky style and the kind of jazzy leanings, I guess you could say. Good soloing at times, and you can hear him playing a lot of great. You can hear his great guitar work featured on songs like "Under the Bridge," "Law Daddy," "California," and I always got to mix up with Flea. Like, which one is Flea? When you don't use real names, it gets confusing to follow who's doing what. But Frusciante was the great guitarist and still is with the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Let's see, number 71. Maybe I'll get one of these guesses right. Peter Frampton. Let's guess Peter Frampton. If I'm right, I'll give myself a pat on the back. Robert Johnson. Oh, an old blues guy. Died in 1938, so he's really been an old blues guy. Everybody loved this guy. Clapton and Dylan credit him with great bluesy style that influenced them. Sure, he didn't really make a lot of money back in those days because he died kind of young. A lot of slide guitar rhythm parts, talking through it. A lot of unique style that, listen, if he influenced Dylan, and Dylan took things like his style, that's pretty impressive. And he was kind of obscure, but if people like Dylan and Clapton claim that you're influenced them, that'll help your sales. And hopefully over the years that his people from his family that lived on, because he probably had people that inherited some future earnings, so maybe that helped him out, that he got some notoriety from sales later on in his life, or later on in time, because his life ended in 1938. He didn't get to see it, but his family hopefully did. Number 70, let's guess. John Fogerty. Could I be right? Jack White. Okay, he's coming to town. He's coming to Laval very soon. I like the White Stripes, and I like his style, but I'm not going to really go and sit him listening to him riff away for 2 hours or whatever. But he's revered as one of these great guitarists. Seven Nation Army is one of the best songs that he's known for. Other ones, too, that don't come to mind instantly, but I know there's two or three more. I think it's his sister that was the drummer in there, and she's no longer with them. But I've seen him in a video with Jimmy Page and maybe Clapton. It's definitely Page and White and one other big shot guitarist. Maybe it's Kravitz, and they're all kind of showing off, playing riffs and impressing each other. And he's a great soloist, blues type of bass, but hard to throw him in the metal category, even though he's kind of off the wall and with his punk type stuff. It's a big mix of everything. Maybe you just can't pigeonhole this guy. He's it's very impressive if you do go and listen to his songs and look at him play live on a video or listening to it. He's very fast and very creative with his guitar and very well respected in business too. I won't guess the next one. That should be a surprise. Number 69, Richard Thompson. Okay, this guy, I know quite a bit about him. He was in a band called Fairport Convention. He might have even popped into town a couple of times, but I never did see him. He doesn't have a song out there that people can say, "Oh, Richard Thompson's solo work." You know, he didn't. He was a folk rock type of guy that had like a style that ventured into English traditional music. So this type of thing was very, very well respected, but not. He wasn't like a pop star, so he didn't have songs that you turn in. You know, you click the radio on and there's a Richard Thompson song or a Fairport Convention song in Canada. I sought out Fairport Convention and other music that he did just because I had read over the years how great this guy was, and I was impressed by the ability that he has. If he's known for songs like "Shoot Out the Lights" in 1952, Vincent Black Lightning. So go look him up. Folk, British folk style, traditional. If you're into the guitar sound, he's your guy. If you're into catchy hits like Paul Simon type of music, it's not that type of guy that had little ditties that you hear on the. And here's another guy, the same type of thing, John McLaughlin. Very, very, very respected blues guy, number 68. Again, you won't. He's not a hit guy, but he's revered. He's absolutely revered. I've heard his name forever. Jazz fusion was his style, like a Miles Davis type of vein of music. But you know, he's like a guitar god. He had orchestras playing with him, the Mahavishnu Orchestra. He had known for his Gibson guitar, and you won't. He's not a pop star. He's a revered guy that's like is considered one of the top men for years. That if he's still around, I mean, people like Clapton know him. But if you ask the average Joe that's sitting around listening to music in his 30s, 20s, John McLaughlin, I don't know. They won't know him. I do know of him, and I know. Listen, if Jeff Beck is saying he's great, then that tells you something. And I'm sure Jeff Beck is definitely going to pop up on this list, which we won't get to the entire list. We'll get another 2 or 3 more in today. But you can expect Jeff Beck to show up on this list. Maybe Fogerty. Gilmore should be up there. You'd think of Harrison. Of course, you're going to get Hendrix up there. I mean, I don't look it up the whole thing because I want to be surprised. I want to learn. If I don't know the guy, then I'll learn about him. T-Bone Walker at number 67. Another blues guy from way back when. B.B. King counts him as one of his influences, or he praises his work. And soloing was like known. He's known for that. A lot of blues. Known for songs like Mean Old World, Call It Stormy Monday. It seems to be that this list is definitely not the flashy guys that you see in AC/DC type of guys. At this point of the list, it's more a lot of guys that people revered and bowed down to and kissed the feet of these guys because they were great guitarists. They're just not limelight guys. They're not guys that did tours for 25,000 screaming fans kind of guys, like AC/DC or Rush or anything like that. But that's the way music is. It's not only the guys that have posters on the wall that are great. It's the guys that are not as popular but are considered brilliant that are making this list, which is fine. Here's a guy that I know overly well because I listen to Howard Stern and he reveres this guy, talks about him constantly. Number 66 is Leslie West, guitarist for Mountain, and he's friends with Stern, so Stern brings him up once in a while. Real name Leslie Weinstein. I know he's due to his diabetes when he was young, he lost a leg, and he still plays. I remember he did a show in BB King's in New York, but I didn't go because I'm rarely in New York. But Mississippi Queen was the only real top 40 song they had. But they were asked to be in Woodstock at one time, but they never. I think they turned it down because they weren't getting enough. They couldn't get paid for the film rights or something like that. But he's revered. Dave Davies comment about him, how flashy he could be, the phrasing. You know, he played with feel, and he's around still. Must be in his 70s too. Mississippi Queen came out in 1970. The drummer in Mississippi Queen, the mountain band, was a guy named Corky Lang who lived in my little town. I've never met him. I don't know him at all. I once sent him a message on Twitter, which he didn't reply to. And but he was definitely Leslie West. If you listen to Howard Stern, he comes on the show every few years, and Stern brings him up quite a bit. Number 65. Let's see, could it be anybody I can predict, or I'll just wing it? Number 65 on the top 100 greatest guitarists from Rolling Stones on Eddie G's Music World. Slash. Well, I have seen Slash live twice. Once was Slash's Snake Pit when he wasn't in Guns N' Roses, and once in the reformed Guns N' Roses, which was 3/5 of Guns N' Roses reforming. And yeah, he's got a definitive style. He walked in the room strumming "Sweet Child of Mine," which got the words. I think Axl kind of threw in the words after hearing the strumming of "Sweet Child of Mine," so that was a monumental feat for him. And all of the great Guns N' Roses songs that are well known, he played the guitar a lot of. There was another guitarist too, Stradlin, I believe, and who's the other guy? Mick something. But he's the main guy. He's the guy you think of at least. He did do some work on a Michael Jackson song, which is now that I have to think of it. Which one was it? It wasn't Dirty Diana. It wasn't Beat It. It was Black or White. Yeah, he did the soloing on Black and White. And Michael had a great sense of humor. If you find you go look around for Michael Jackson live type of thing, there's a video where he fakes getting mad at Slash for screwing up on a live performance of that song. And Michael Jackson runs up to him and says, "Slash, what are you doing? You made a mistake. What's wrong?" And then, makes the audience think that he's really chewing out Slash for like doing a bad performance. And then Michael Jackson gives him a hug, and then it's revealed that it was all just a bit of a joke. Well, I know Slash has been cashing in massively. I saw him on the reunion tour last August of 2017 in the reunion of Guns N' Roses, which was 3/5. It was an outdoor event, and one of these things where you buy tickets based on sections, and I was a bit far, so the sound was crystal clear, so I did hear all of Guns N' Roses very well, but even with binoculars, these guys were miles away. I could not really see him that well, but I could see him like walking around. I guess him and Axl and all the other guys with their famous feuds put their feuds aside, since, let's face it, Slash I think lost $30 to $40 million in a divorce, so he's got some big bills to pay. So that reunion tour, I feel bad that he's going to have to cough up quite a few million to that wife and kid. Well, his kids is different, but it's maybe it's okay. The judge said, listen, Slash, you got to pay, you got to pay. But anyway, that ends another edition of Eddie G's Music World for another week. We will try to be a little more innovative next week, come up with a couple of focuses on some bands and singers, and continue down this list. And thanks to Keep Creepo Freak, one of the rare listeners to my show, and I appreciate it. And I listen to what he does too. And of course, the Greekster and me, and a couple more tune in, like Speech Impediment Man and the Movie Guy too. Eddie G's Music World signing off for another week. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll be back soon.